Welcome to Your Next Level Now with your host, Bob Donnell. As a human behaviorist, Bob has helped people from every walk of life reach their next level, both personally and professionally. Whether a celebrity, professional athlete, or entrepreneur, Bob has helped them align their behavior with their desired result in their life and career. This is Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell.
All right, guys, welcome back. For those of you that were part of the Get Connected portion, and those of you that were waiting in line or you're watching online right now, maybe you're in Facebook group, one of the Facebook groups. Welcome to Next Level by Association. This is our it's called Third Thursday Gathering. We do this every third Thursday for the last 13 years. And so it's a great opportunity for us to gather, great opportunity for us to have some meaningful conversation, and to connect with some different people. And so today, when I'm looking at this opportunity came about kind of at the last minute. And I don't believe it's an accident. I believe it's intentional. But I was introduced to this man yesterday. And we got an opportunity to have a great conversation and just learn more about him. And Kelly Cardenas is just, guys, he's one of the guys that he started the conversation with me by saying, hey, look, the first thing is you just got to agree to be my friend forever. And I was like, I love that statement. His attitude is that, but it goes beyond that. It transcends that statement because he makes you feel like you just want to spend more time with them. You just want to hang out. And this is a guy who's built a very successful hairstyling business, at multiple locations, did it for years and years and years, developed great clientele, developed great practices, and now and then he's speaking, and he's coaching, and he has a podcast that, when you think about what came first, the chicken or the egg, this is the guy that the thing I love about, this is a guy who's practiced what he's teaching. He's installed and instilled those things, those characteristics, those behaviors, those beliefs into his life. And so that's what qualifies him and uniquely qualifies him to teach what he teaches. I believe that he is a gentleman that can help any entrepreneur. I believe he's an entrepreneur, a gentleman that can help any father, any parent. I believe that he's a gentleman that can actually help anyone get to their next level. Shameless plug. Get to their next level personally and professionally. So, man, Kelly, thanks for being here tonight.
I appreciate, and I want to give a huge shout out. You got when I say the champ is here, one of the, if not the most famous motivational speakers in the world, James Dixon, is actually on the line right now. He is one of the biggest on YouTube. He's got 1.48 million subscribers on YouTube, and he's on the line right now. And the #1 sales coach in the world, Mr. Joe, is here also and watching. So I'm honored. But the reason why I get to do what I do is exactly what I said to you when I first started off, is because I have the greatest friends in the world that are the greatest at what they do. And it just allows me to be nothing but Kelly. And when I'm being Kelly, nobody can compete.
Amen to that one. Yeah, Joe Ingham has been a member since I think it was our third month, 13 years. So he joined one of the first adopters. So welcome, Joe. And your friend must be through your Facebook. Right.
Yeah, I sent him out his name is James Dixon, Absolute Motivation on YouTube. And this guy, he's a unilateral amputee, 33 surgeries before he was 11 years old. On his 34th surgery at 11, they put him under anesthesia, cut his leg off without telling him. He woke up, his mom told him he would be nothing but a cripple, made him say it, smacked him across the face and told him, say you're a cripple. He had to say that, but his grandmama said, no, you're a superhero. And he chose to listen to his grandmama as opposed to his mom. And now he is one of the top motivational speakers in the entire world.
James, man, I love that story. And I love that what I'm hearing about who you've become in the process of dealing with all of that adversity. Thank you first for being of service to others and using your situation to empower and enlighten others. I do not take it lightly that you happen to be on this evening. So thank you. And I would love to stay connected with you. And I'd love to have you on the show sometime. So love to do that. You know, there's so many things that just so many things that you talk about in your podcast. I mean, guys, go to YouTube and look at his shorts. Go to YouTube and look at his uploads. I mean, they are classic. I got to ask you one of the things. You are now an orphan. My mom died when I was 17, and I never knew my dad. So I realized at 17, I didn't dawn on me until after she was gone, and probably till 18 before I'm like, oh yeah, I am an orphan. I thought as orphans would only apply to little kids. And then I realized, no, I'm an orphan now. What did becoming an orphan at your age, because there's in the last 4 or 5 years, right? Losing both of your parents. Mm-hmm. What did that mean to you when you had no parents?
Well, I think it was the preparation. So I believe that my mom knew that she was checking out early at 62. And I believe that my dad knew that he was checking out early at 68, and I'd live a lot of life without him. So they told me something that was frustrating as a kid. But now I know why they told me. Every time I asked them a question growing up, they would say to me, I don't know, but I know someone who does. And they would point my eyes to the word and point my eyes to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And so when I did have my mom and my dad go and visit Jesus and hang out with him on Streets of Gold, then I actually wasn't an orphan, because my father is very much alive and he's with me every day. So that was a thing that they put in line there. I didn't realize it. I didn't know it until later on, but they kept doing it. And again, it frustrated, because all I wanted was an answer from my mom or from my dad circumstantially. But what they were teaching me was principle based, that there was always an answer, and anything that I ever dealt with circumstantially, all I had to do was test it with the truth. And when I tested it with the truth, then I would always be led to him, and he created me, and he has all the answers. So I had basically Google before Google was Google.
Wow. Oh man. That is such a great portion of your story, because I see how much they've influenced you over the things that I've read and watched you talk about them. One of the coolest things that I got to experience in just listening to you and listening to you talk about your dad and things like that were how much you respected them. You respect them and love them, right? But I want to know, was there ever a time where you didn't, or you were in your rebellious teenagers, whatever they want to call it? And then what was it like when you came back into the fold and began to respect them?
I think it happened constantly. I mean, up until probably, a year before my pops passed away, I was on the phone with him and I yelled at him, and I yelled at him and I said, where were you at times when my parents split up, because I didn't have a beaver cleaver kind of situation. But I asked my pop, I was like, where were you, man? And I was yelling at him. And what I realized is he was teaching me a lesson at that time. And I didn't realize it at the time. But I was yelling at him. He let me yell. He let me say all the stuff he said, and he didn't retort. And I felt so absolutely horrible at the end of that conversation. And I realized all the things that I was doing wrong, not because he told me, but because he allowed me to be an idiot. And I think a lot of times we don't allow people in our lives to be an idiot around us. We try and correct them, and then they just get mad at us. As opposed to my dad had the wisdom, because he was always constantly directing my eyes to the Lord, but his eyes were on there. And he just allowed me to say every single nasty thing to him. And this was a year. I mean, you can imagine what I dealt with afterwards. And then my pops passes away a year later. And I'm like, can I have that conversation back? But I believe that he had me do that because he knew that at some point my son was going to have that conversation with me. And as opposed to me going at my son strong, that I would shut up, I would listen, and I would hear from his point of view as opposed to mine.
Now that is powerful. If only we could be more like that on a consistent and persistent basis, right? And not just with our kids or our spouses, but with everyone. Man, thank you for sharing that, because I think that we all need a reminder about that, but I also think we need it lived out. So my question about your parents is, I'm taking it that they were actual humans and not perfect. Am I correct?
Absolutely, 100% human, man.
Good,
100%.
So we're all on equal playing field there. And the reason I say that is because I think sometimes as parents, or even as entrepreneurs, we're out in the world and we're living our lives, and we go, well, I don't want to say this because then they're going to hold me to that, and I'm not perfect. So, well, what about not being perfect means that we can't live our life to our fullest and maybe make some mistakes along the way. I love the story. I think if I'm remembering correctly, you said you had a total walkout of your business 5 times.
Mhm.
Is it 5?
Mhm.
Now, look, you've got salons, multiple places, multiple locations. You've got, obviously with salons, you have different personality types, all handling your business while you're not there. And all of a sudden, 5 times, not once, 5 times, they walk out and abandon you, maybe mid shift or within the work week. And I thought, wow. But the thing that I appreciated so much was hearing you talk about how some of it was your fault, that you took responsibility for the way you treated someone, or the way you said something, or the manner in which you did it at a wrong time. Can you kind of go back on that? Because where did that come from, where you're going to take ownership for something where clearly you've lost, what one time was $600,000, if I remember correctly?
Yeah. And I think that was the least amount that I lost at one time. I mean, I lost 600,000, 800,000. I lost 1.2 million in 6 weeks. So, and just to clear up and make sure that people know, and for your listeners, all those things were past tense, meaning that we sold the company. We're not in the professional beauty industry anymore.
Right.
But the reason why is because people quit companies, or people don't quit companies, they quit people.
Amen.
And I had to take responsibility for that. These people that walked out, they didn't walk out of a company. They walked out because of me. And I created the culture. I had the responsibility. The buck stopped with me. And even though it was people that I was doing work through, or maybe they said, I'm leaving because the manager of that location was my responsibility. And this is what my pops taught me from the very first. And it's very, very simple. And it just goes like this. There's only one business in the world, Bob, and one business only, and that's the people business. If you take the people out of the business, you have no business at all. So what most business owners and entrepreneurs do is they create systems, they fall in love with systems, and then they try and manage people. But it has to be flipped. So you can fall in love with the people and manage the system. But if you ever get it switched, you'll have walkouts. And that's what I did. That's where I made the mistakes. So, but the cool thing is most of the people that are in my industry, as far as the speaking side, or, you were talking about the coaching and things like that, most of those people are theory-based people. They've actually never built a multi-million-dollar company that they failed at, and they haven't lost millions of dollars because they've made money because they were telling people what they should be doing, but they've never done it. Right. And that was the cool thing for me, where I'm not talking about anything that I've not done, and I'm most of the time talking about all the things that I screwed up.
And I loved that, because as I watched the videos, I saw several points where you brought up your own inadequacies or your own mistakes. And I think that's great for our kids when they see we can make a mistake, so that they can go, oh, so if it's okay for dad to mistake, by all means, I can make a mistake too every now and then. But to have that ability and to use the platform that you have now. I mean, you ran successful business, you did successful things, you made some amazing memories for people around you. And then you have the opportunity now to have a platform. Let's talk about this podcast, because you go from a hairstylist and running these salons to podcast. I mean, what, why, and what was the precipice for that?
Well, you think about it, right? The common denominator is always people. Right. And so let's go back to what my pop said. There's only one business in the world, one business only, and is the people business. Take the people out the business, you ain't got no business at all. And I said the same thing to my pop when I started off on the podcast. I was like, Pop, like this was 3 years ago when I started the podcast, 3.5 years ago. And I said, Pop, I'm 45 years old and I'm starting new and fresh in something. I had 30 years in the professional beauty industry. Now I'm starting something new. He said, boy, you ain't starting nothing new. What have you been doing for the last 30 years? I said, well, I've been doing appointments. He said, how often? I said, every 15 to 30 minutes. He said, what did you do? And I said, well, I told him technically. And then he's like, no, what'd you do? And I said, who'd you do it on? And I said, people. He said, what'd you do with the people? I said, I asked some questions. He said, son, you ain't starting over. He said, God knew that you were going to where you were going and he needed to prepare you. But if he would have told you where you were going, you would have screwed it up. So he prepared me. See, what happens is a lot of people say, and I heard this, I'm the co-host of Secret Knot with Greg Reed and Prosperity Camp. And a woman stood up and she said, oh man, it's kind of easy for you and Greg because you guys are natural at speaking. I said, wait right there. I said, wait right there. I said, for almost 20 years, 42 weekends out of the year, I was on the road speaking to anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people every single weekend for 42 weekends a year for almost 20 years. So I killed some lions. I killed some bears. So this Philistine uncircumcised standing in front of me ain't no problem. I could take him out with a little rock, but that rock was because the bears and the lions that I had already taken out. But God will build us faith to faith, glory to glory. And that's for me, the podcast was so natural because the person sitting in the chair, I had to create true oneness. And see, oneness is that I ask a question and then I shut my mouth and I actually listen. And then when I listen, I tell them back what they said. And then they say, oh my gosh, you're a genius. I'm not a genius. I just listen to you, which your husband doesn't, which your sister doesn't, which your brother doesn't. And then they would say, oh my gosh, I don't have any problem paying you whatever. Well, think about this. It's the only time that they felt like the only person in the world. And when you can do that for people, you can adapt that to any business. And so now I adapted in the podcast business. And so when you listen to the podcast and you talked about it earlier, on the podcast, I actually let people talk. And because I want to hear their story, I already know mine. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And the other caveat to that is the fact that you're willing to let them talk is one thing. And then two, to practice it, to discipline yourself to let them talk. And then to realize that, like you said, your audience already knows your story. You already know your story. They're not tuning in to hear your story again and again and again. They're tuning in to hear who you're bringing on and what nuggets you're going to glean or pull from them for the rest of us. So thank you for being that catalyst.
And think about this, Bob, is okay. Think about a career, right? So when I was talking about being on the road, but I also had appointments. So for 20 or almost 30 years, I took anywhere from 15 to 25 guests a day. So I interviewed 15 to 25 people a day, 5 days a week for 30 years. So when someone says you're natural at this, am I natural or did I kill some lions and some bears? And so what I would suggest and what I tell people all the time, and I was just talking with a young kid, he just got in his industry yesterday. I was talking to him and he said something and I said, there's nothing that can stand in the place of run, what I call run or reps. If you want to get good at basketball, don't watch videos of Michael Jordan or Kobe. You got to play. You got to play. You got to play. Lace them up. Go do it. Do it over and over and over and over and over again as often as possible. And I tell you, in the speaking side, for me, literally, like Bob, if you have a bar mitzvah, I will speak at it because I love it. If you have a kid's birthday party, I'll speak at it. If you have a church gathering, I'll speak at it. You tell me where to be, I will be there because I want as many reps as possible. And I love this more than anything in the world. And I know it was what I was built for. So that's what I want to be able to let people know of is like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it over and over again and you'll get better.
The reps, man, the reps. But see, that's where I think most people, one, they don't shut up long enough to learn. Two, then they're not willing to do the reps. They're not willing to put in those long nights, days. I remember Zig Ziglar talking about when he first started speaking, you know, because he had been selling pots and pans or whatever, something like that. And then he goes into speaking, and he goes, and I contacted a place that was, you know, 90 miles away or 200 miles away or whatever. And he's like, and I said, hey, I'll come and speak for free. And they're like, no. He's like, I'll speak for free. They're like, no. He was willing to put in the reps. How many years? That was at 45, I believe, when he started going out and speaking. Look at the career that he had from 45 till the day he died. Amazing, but he was putting in the reps. Thank you. Let me just acknowledge you and thank you for putting in the reps, because I believe that every time that you and I operate from less than our best, the world is operating from a deficit. And so the fact that you're putting in the reps means the rest of us get to benefit from the reps you're putting in. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
You know, looking back, say 10 years ago, is where you're at right now where you thought you were going to be 10 years ago, or did you think you're going to be someplace else? And what was that like? What did that image look like?
I mean, 10 years ago, I had a multi-million-dollar company that spanned the country. You know, and 3 years ago, in one fall swoop, all of it ended. Like one of it just walked away, gone. And we said we're non-essential. Now we built it back and we created efficiencies and we did it better than anyone in the whole entire industry. And that's what positioned us to be able to sell it. But I tell you, for me, like, there's no way. I mean, when I was in high school, I'll tell you, go further back, Bob. When I was in high school, I told people I was going in the military, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but God did. And then he prepared every little thing. And I think a lot of times we get in our own way. And this is where I want to challenge. I want to challenge some of the things, because there was actually a saying, and there's a saying by a guy who a lot of people worship that they shouldn't be worshiping. And this is going to be a bad thing. There are a lot of people going to get mad at me for this, but it's 2 words, and it's called Jim Rohn. And a lot of people worship his words, but they don't put them in the context and the culture and don't understand the content that he's talking about. When they say that you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Well, I could tell you about a guy who that didn't apply to, and his name was Jesus. Jesus didn't put himself around 5 people that were the greatest people in the world. He put himself around some tax collectors and some nasty people, and he turned out completely okay. But he was looking at the heart of people. And see where we skew the information a lot of times is the sum of the 5 people around us. So go get a bunch of wealthy people. No. He was saying, go get the 5 people that have the best heart that might not be in the best place physically. And we miss the boat a lot because we try and interpret, we try and control. And I tell you, 10 years ago, if you would have asked me what I was doing, I wouldn't have said that I would be on a call with one of the best speakers in the world, Bob Donnell, with one of the most impactful men in the country, and have the opportunity. But the only reason why is because you didn't know 2 days ago, but you know who did? You know who did? God planned this. He predestined. You couldn't have stopped it. Your guy canceled because it was planned. And for me, that's the hardest thing, because I want to plan. I want to be like, yo, God, like, just let me in. Just tell me what I'm going to do 5 days from now. But I tell you, on December 18th, 2021, there's no way I would have told you that my dad the next morning would be in heaven. But when we can stay, just this is exactly what you talked about in your TEDx, when we can stay exactly present, and you are the master at this, you ask questions that are actually pertinent to the person and to the moment, as opposed to trying to make our rituals our religion. And that's what has happened. And that's what is happening a lot around, is the rituals. I mean, think about it. Like, people are regurgitating information, but they're not going to the source of where it came from, and they're not understanding the content of it. They're not understanding the context of when it was said, and they're definitely not understanding the culture in which it was said in. And once we understand those things and we get them in line, then we can start to develop our heart set, right? And our heart set is our belief system. Then we could develop our mindset, which is our intentions, and we can develop our skill set, which is our actions. But most people only go that deep. Oh, I just need to change my mindset. Well, that's only your intentions. Your mindset won't be able to be stable unless your heart set, your beliefs, what you actually believe is in line and is concrete and solid. And the only way that it'll be concrete and solid is if it's truth.
Let's talk about that, because I think a lot of people have been fed lies as truth. How have you come to the point where you've really been able to discern truth from a lie?
Well, I test it with the word. I mean, I test every single thing with the word. I tell you, this is going to be a public service announcement that most people won't want to hear. The reason why is because it could, I mean, if people, which they won't, if people listen and applied this, the personal development industry would cease to exist as we know it. As opposed to personally developing, if we just focused on the 4 people or 5 people that sat around our dinner table and became a better parent, our kids would not need the personal development movement.
Wow. Woo.
And
what do you think it's going to take for people to do that?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I have the answers. I don't. That's not something that I should say, because then they won't buy my book and course and then run down the line and do all this stuff. But for me, like, I know that what I want to do is do the exact same thing that my parents did for me. I don't know, but I know someone who does. And when I say I test it with the word, there's 31 Proverbs in the Bible. There's 31 days in a month. Corresponding proverb, corresponding day. And I guarantee you, if you do this challenge and you just look at the corresponding proverbs of the corresponding day, and I wish I wrote the Bible, because then I could sell it to you, but I can't. But if you read it, what'll happen is, and you put on the glasses of the Holy Spirit, because the glasses of the Holy Spirit will make the word come alive, and it will start to read you, and the circumstances that you have will apply. And it just said it. In Proverbs 21:26, it said, no wisdom, insight, or plan can succeed against the Lord. Like, I mean, it's truth. Like, it's, and when I say it, I'm not saying like, oh, you need to be, you know, you need to believe like this. No, I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying, test it. And every single thing, Bob, every single thing that comes into mind, and I screw up on this a lot. And this is why I had my parents. This is why I have great friends like a James Dixon that will pop me right back in line and ask me, did you test it with truth? But ask yourself, like, the next time, and I've done this, and I get excited about shiny things. I always do. And someone will come with the shiny thing, and then my wife will be like, sit on it for a second, test it, see. Because the crazy thing is, and I told you this, Bob, off of, you know, when we were on the phone yesterday, I said, Bob, if you are my friend for the rest of your life, you and I will never be in a rush to make any deal, to do anything, because we know we've got time.
Right.
But what the world will tell you is, you're the sum of the 5 people around you. So go get the hottest people right now and put them around you, and then you're going to be great. No. Because I could tell you this, every person on this call was broken, every single person, including myself. And in the event that we only seek after those high level people, then none of us would be picked.
Boy, what a difference of perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
But it's just perspective. I could be completely wrong. So test it with the truth.
Well, and it's perspective, and you can apply it and test it for yourself, right? It's that easy. I got a question. I love one of your shorts where you talked about you wanting inspiration and your mentor saying you need discipline. That was powerful. I was like, okay, stop, replay, replay. That is powerful. I can't imagine what it felt like when you're calling somebody who you trust, you love, you respect, and you say, come on, I just need inspiration. And he goes, no, you need discipline. Can you elaborate on that? That was powerful.
You want me to elaborate on how it felt?
Yeah, because man, when it landed for me and I wasn't asking the question, I was like, holy crap.
Oh, it was a punch in the gut, the face, in the throat. Because again, like I was talking about, I was searching for I was searching for a spiritual answer and going through physical means. I was trying to find fuel for my electric car.
Oh,
And that's, I mean, that's what we do a lot. Like we're constantly like, you know, and when I said the heart set, the mindset and the skill set, that creates an irresistible vibe when you get them in line. That's what people ask me all the time. They're like, oh, wow, I feel different when I'm around you. I know why. The vibe that you have is just the feeling that you walk away from. Like the feeling that you have is my vibe. It's not the feeling that I have. It's the feeling that you have when you walk away. And if my heart set, which is my beliefs, my mindset, which is my intentions, and my skill set, which is my actions, if all those are in line, you start to say, wow, I'm attracted to this. I'm attracted because I like, it's all congruent. Right. And when I called, his name is Gary Spellman, very good friend of mine, very huge mentor to me. And when I called him, I wanted him to tell me what I wanted him to tell me. I already had a preconceived notion of the answer to make me feel good. And when he hit me with that, I realized that most of the time we're looking for this out of the sky and give me a sign. And he was like, no, put in the reps, bro. Put in the reps. It takes discipline to be a good father. It takes discipline to be a good husband. It takes discipline to be a good brother, a good son, a good friend. It takes discipline. And when you're not disciplined to do those things, then you fail. And if I could tell you a quick story, and I failed today. I reached out to my best friend from sixth grade, and I don't know if I'll tear up, but I probably am going to, because his name is Dave. And Dave was my boy, my ride or die since I was in sixth grade. And it's been strained. Our relationship has been strained in the last couple of months. And I reached out to him and I said, you know, by text, and I said, you know, if I've done something to offend you, I want to apologize, but I feel that, you know, we're not connected. And when I text, you don't text back and all this stuff. And then he hit me back in the first couple of sentences. I'm getting goosebumps while I say it. It said, I miss my friend. I miss the authentic Kelly that was my friend in sixth grade. And I realized that I was trying to draw him into my world now. Hey, come see the podcast. Hey, come see me speak. Hey, come do this. And he was saying, can we go to Wiener Schnitzel like we used to, have a hot dog, and shed all those things that you do because I care about who you are? And I got smacked in the face actually right before this call.
What do you do with that now?
I slow down. I texted him back and I said, man, I miss you. I love you. I want to spend time with you. And you know what I'm going to do? I got to figure out a way to be able to get to him in Las Vegas and not wrap a business trip around it, but go hike because he likes to hike, go hang with his dog, and just be there present with my phone off, not telling him any things that I do, but just asking him about things that are important to him, because that's my boy. That's my boy. Since sixth grade, that's my boy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he was there for me. He picked me up from the airport, took me to the rehab center where my dad was, where he spent his last days. The last time that I went to see my dad, that guy picked me up and then left me with my dad and said, call me when you need me to come back. And he came and picked me up and took me to lunch and then took me back to my dad. And that was the last time I ever saw my dad. And this is the guy that was willing to do anything. And all I wanted to do was show him all the dumb shit that I've been doing in my life that doesn't mean anything outside of our friendship.
Ooh, thank you for sharing that. No, that's not an easy share. I appreciate that. You know, you've had some pivotal moments in your life and some great learning lessons along the way, some great mentors. I mean, come on. Paul Mitchell, founder of that, what he created, what he learned along the way, and the things that he was willing to teach you, the things that he was willing to do for you. Let's talk about, since you talked about your dad right there, let's talk about what he did for you and for your dad.
When my dad was diagnosed with cancer, prostate cancer, we were doing a motorcycle ride that I do every year with John Paul for his birthday. And I called John Paul and Gary Spellman, my mentor, and I said, "Hey, hey man, I'm not going to be able to come." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because my pops, that's what everyone called him. My pops got diagnosed with cancer, and we just got to spend some time with the family." He called me back. Gary called me back about 10 minutes later, and I was telling him through tears like I am now. And I told, he said, "Hey, I just talked to John Paul, and John Paul wants Pops to be his special guest. We want him to come." They brought him, put him in the sidecar, and he was in the front of the motorcade, because we have about 50 to 75 police officers that take us through the city and on our motorcycle ride. And John Paul pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, remind me, because I want to do something for you. But remind me." And I was like, "Yeah." And everyone's vying for his time. But then about half an hour later, he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, let's do it right now. I'm calling my wife. I've got this company down in Brazil called Daily Body Restore. It's not FDA approved because it's not a pharmaceutical, and they wouldn't like this to happen. But it's I think it's $29 that you buy it on Amazon." But he said, "I'm going to get your dad a lifetime supply. It's a probiotic, and we've taken, I think it was 19 at the time, 19 stage 4 cancer patients, and they all went into remission after just taking this." And my pops got, a lot more time because of that. And John Paul took the time and not only had his wife deliver, she stopped what she was doing. She came down to the bar where we were at, but he shunned everyone in the whole place. They were all asking for pictures, all the stuff. He shunned everyone. He said, "Pops, come here, Pops." He sat him down, and John Paul read what was on the box. My dad could have read what was on the box, but he read what was on the box. And then he said, "Pops, I want to let you know, I've got a lifetime supply for you, whatever you need." He said, "If you need more, you let me know. If you have any questions, you let me know." And then he read the instructions to him and he told him. And then my dad, my pops got up to go, and he grabbed him again. And he said, "I just want you to know, if there's anything that you need, you let me know." And for me, that's what the essence of Paul Mitchell is. It was never the products. It was the people behind the bottle. And that's the reason why Paul Mitchell is the greatest in the hair care industry, and the only still privately owned major brand in the hair care industry. Everyone else is owned by a large conglomerate, but they are the only ones. But it's not because the products they have, is not what's in the bottle, it's what's behind the bottle. And those are the people that the culture is. So,
Man, yeah. When you shared that story on video, I was like, that's such a powerful story. It's not what people do because they have to, it's because they want to, that really sets people apart, I think. I would much rather have somebody be married to me out of desire than out of obligation, right? Business wise or otherwise. So thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for sharing that about your dad. I got to bring up this statement you made because when I heard it, I was like, okay, unpack that, to use Joe Ingram's terms. Unpack that. Success is not a good negotiator.
it knocks lightly, and and it doesn't stick around. It knocks lightly when you just finished a 14-hour day. It knocks lightly when you got 2 kids crying, you worked 16 hours, and the lights are off. It knocks when you don't have money to be able to pay rent, and your parents split up and you have no place to stay, so you have to stay on your mom's friend's couch for a couple of weeks at the most pivotal time in your life. That's when it knocks, and most people don't answer it. And it just goes to the next, it goes on to the next one. And I tell you, like, I would say I'm a pretty damn good negotiator. And the reason why is because I have the spirit of Jacob. That's what my parents told me. They said, I'll just lock on. I mean, you could break my hip if you want, but I'm going to hold on to you until you bless me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, but success ain't like that. Like it'll knock lightly, but it doesn't ever come the way that you want it to come. I got a vision years ago, like probably 3-4 years ago, and God gave me a vision. He said it's going to be a small theater, then it's going to be the House of Blues, which will be 3,000 to 5,000. Then it'll be MGM Grand Garden Arena or Mandalay Bay Event Center, which is 10 to 13,000. It'll be Madison Square Garden, 15 or 17 to 19,000, and it'll culminate in Soldier Field, which is 70 to 100,000 people that you'll speak to. And I was excited. And then I asked God, I said, what am I going to say? He said, I'll tell you when you get there. And I was so excited. I went to my wife and I was like, oh my gosh, it's done. Like it's done. Like Soldier Field is coming. She said, no, it'll start with an audience of 1 and it'll grow to an audience of 2. And you'll have to kill some lions. You'll have to kill some bears. So when you get in front of those 100,000, you'll actually know what to say. And so that part is the, I think is the biggest, you know, it's the biggest part for me, you know.
Man, what is? I mean, when we heard about that last night, when we were listening to it, we're like that. And Flo even I think said, "Well, that's a vision," and I was quickly reminded, because it was like, yeah, but it's not like a vision that you set up. It was a vision that was given to you, and now you got to figure out and manage putting together the expectation and the pieces to get there. What great wisdom from your wife too.
Well, and one of the things is, you know, for me, and I don't know, like people are like, oh, well, are you reaching out to Madison Square Garden? Are you doing this? And I was like, no, I'm working my land where I'm at right now. And, you know, that's what I'm called to do. And I don't know how those things are going to happen. But the cool thing is because I don't know when I get there, and Bob, you'll be there. You'll be there in Soldier Field or a like venue that'll be 70 to 100,000. And when you are there and somebody asks me, how do you get to do this? I won't be able to say, if you follow my 7 steps, you'll get here too. What I'll have to say is, I don't know, but I know someone who does, and I'll direct their eyes to where my parents directed my eyes.
Powerful right there. I mean, that's a mic drop moment for sure. You know, I witnessed you talking to an audience, and you had obviously listened to the person that was speaking before, or a person that had said something, and it impressed me that you were listening in tune, even though you weren't on stage at the time, obviously. But when you came up on stage, you addressed something that this gentleman said, and I want you to think of, I want to ask you, did you ever reflect on it after that point? Because you said you loved his statement. He said, training without accountability is entertainment. Said by an audience member named Peter. I remember him saying it to you, or I remember you saying it, reiterating back. What did that mean to you in the moment? And then since that time, what has it meant to you?
Say the statement again, because I remember where I was. It was
training without accountability.
Yes.
Is entertainment.
I mean, think about it, right? Think about that. And when it was a gut punch though.
Yeah.
Because as a speaker, as you know, as much as we want to be in touch with the heart, connect with the audience, there's a little bit in us that's like, I got to show out. Yeah. They got to love me. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I believe that God was telling me, like, understand. And that statement was strong. It was here in Carlsbad.
It was servant leadership, right?
Servant leadership. Yeah. And you know, you do your research too, Bob. Like you've done your research like nobody I've ever seen in my life. Nobody. You went into the deep cuts. You know what I'm saying? You went in the crate, like all my hip hop people, they said they're digging in the crates. But that moment for me, it was like, how much in my life am I not actually holding people accountable for, and that I'm training them And I'm doing the stuff and I'm showing them the stuff, but I'm not calling them the next day and asking them, are you actually doing it?
Mm.
And I had to hold on. This sucked. And please don't tell anyone, Bob. It's just between you and I.
Just between us.
There was a large percentage of people in my life at the time that were just getting entertainment.
How many things did you have to do to remedy that?
I'm still doing it, man. I'm still doing it. Like,
Thank you.
I'm telling you, like I was on my phone the other day. I'm on my phone on the couch, right? Football game's on. Supposed to be watching football, but I'm watching my phone. And I look over at my son and instantly I started judging because I was judging him on his actions, but judging me on my intentions. I don't mean to be on the phone.
Ooh.
I don't mean to be on the phone. I'm doing business. This is my business. This is my lifestyle. This is how I provide for you, boy. That's how I bought that phone that you're using, boy. But you know what? Son, you don't need to get addicted to that phone. You don't need to be on the phone all the time. You need to be able to pay attention. And then I looked and I was like, this just happened. This was like 3 days ago. And then I looked and I was like, he's been watching because he's not seeing what I do. He's not hearing what I say. He's hearing where he's at. And where he's at, he's looking at a guy who's on his phone.
Yeah. And it's not just he's looking at a guy that's on his phone. He's looking at a guy that he respects, that he loves and knows loves him without fail. Wow, man, I tell you, how many. Okay, so now I got to go back and revisit some of those things. Oh, it's brutal, man. It's brutal. But I love the fact that you cause pause for yourself and for others, including myself. So thank you for being that catalyst for that as well.
You're thanking me for getting kicked in the teeth, Bob. Like,
Yeah.
I keep getting kicked in the teeth. I don't know if you saw the video today, but I had the most epic dad fail in the world like 2 days ago. I got mad at my daughter and I was like, look, I need to know if you could get a ride to your musical practice, because I got a really important interview, because I had one of the top producers in Hollywood that was here in the studio for the podcast. And I told her that, and I was like, you need to tell me or else I'll have to reschedule. And he's a really important guy. And then I sat in that for a second and I was like, you know what I just said to my daughter? That she's not as important as this guy that I don't even know. And she's my daughter. So I had to go in and I had to eat crow, stick my tail between my legs and be like, baby, honestly, like if you can't get a ride, I'm canceling the interview. I'll cancel it, whatever it takes, because you are the most important. And what happened is then after, her friend called her and said, I could give you a ride. And she got a ride and I was able to do the interview. But the only reason why I was able to do the interview is because of the grace of God. But he was teaching me a lesson. Boy, there is no one. I don't care if he was the producer of Platoon, Dirty Dancing, Terminator 2, and all the Mortal Kombat movies in the world. He ain't more important than your daughter.
Amen.
So if you being inspired is me getting kicked in the teeth, I ain't gonna have no teeth left, Bob. It's
not a very nice thing. But I thank you because it caused me to reflect on how many times have I done that without saying those words, but my actions meant the same. So I appreciate you saying that.
Thank you.
And you being present enough to acknowledge that about yourself so that the rest of us can gain and glean insight about our own lives. You know, I love what John Maxwell says. I quote him all the time on this one thing. He says, Lord, help me forgive those who sin differently than me. You know, we can point the finger all the time, but guess what? Just because we don't have their sin, their problem, doesn't mean we don't have something, and we do. Lord, help me forgive those who sin differently than me. So, thank you for sharing that. We're going to wrap this up because I want to be respectful of your time. And here's a couple of things I just want to address because I heard you mention several times in your podcast, this is a game changer, or this was a game changer. What defines a game changer for you, or maybe has defined a game changer for you?
It's something that really challenges my thought process and my belief system at the time. And probably one of the biggest game changers for me was going to, I grew up in Taiwan. I was born in England and then we went to Taiwan. So I lived there as a young kid, but I got to go back to Taiwan, to Taipei, and went down to Kaohsiung and then did some work in Shanghai. And when I got there and I landed, I looked around and number one, I was the tallest guy there. Number two, in customs. Number two, no one had the same hair color as me. Number three, no one had the same skin color as me. Number four, nobody spoke my language. And number five, nobody even remotely looked like me at all. And there's very few opportunities that you'll have to do this, as my dad is Mexican and my mom was white. So most people look at me and they're like, oh, but as a Mexican man, there is only two places in the world where that can happen: Africa and Asia. It's the only two. If you go to Europe or you go any other place around the world, you're going to see people who look like you. And what a game changer for me was to realize I don't like these, the people that are here have no responsibility to believe anything or connect with anything that I see as true. So I had to go to them and I had to sit in and say, okay, why am I doing all these things in my country that I think are normal when here none of the people connect with it at all? And that really was a game changer for me. And most of the time, Bob, you would be hard pressed in America you have to force yourself into these type of scenarios. In America, you would have to. And think about it. Think about your neighborhood. Think about and it goes like, if you live in a certain neighborhood, a lot of times it's not completely mixed up and completely eclectic. A lot of times you live in a neighborhood that a lot of people believe exactly what you believe, and they don't challenge it. Yeah. And when you put yourself in a place where you're challenged, that is a game changer. Like when I had Larry Kasanoff in the place, and he said in his book, A Touch of the Madness, he said, don't listen. And I was like, wait a second, I was taught to listen. And then he explained it. He said, listen to the one voice that has the most wisdom, and it's your own. And I was like, whoa, like listen to your heart.
Yeah.
And then what do you fill in your heart with? Because whatever you fill your heart with, that's what's going to come out.
Amen to that. Wow. Yeah, that's some great stuff right there. I want to reflect on a couple of people are saying hi, hi to you guys. Hello. One person said January 22nd, 2021. We had no idea my husband was going to be with Jesus. He was 65 and we were married for 50 years. Another one, John Hackelman. I want to make the introduction. John, I want you to meet this guy. John Hackelman is probably one of the greatest UFC fight trainers out there. He trained Chuck Liddell.
I know John Hackelman. I'm from Lompoc, California.
Oh, that's right. John
Hackelman is an absolute legend.
Yes.
My brother was Vanderlei Silva's agent. John Hackelman, you're a legend. You're the man. I love you.
He's watching. So, yeah, so definitely, if you don't have a way to connect, let me know. I'll make sure.
I would love to have him on the podcast. It would be my absolute honor. I'm a Central Coast guy. It would mean the world to me.
Awesome. I'll put the connection together for you guys. Yeah, super good guy. John, love you, brother. Thank you for hopping on and sharing. As we wrap this up, as we close this part, I just want to acknowledge the difficult conversations you've been willing to have. People always say, Bob, what do you think is one of the number? And you've worked with these military leaders, you've worked with these icons in business, what's the number? And I think, man, they're willing to have the difficult conversations. They're not going to be comfortable until they become uncomfortable and help everyone around them be their best. And so thank you for being willing to have those difficult conversations. And I think the difficult conversations start with the conversation that we have with ourselves first. then with others, and then how do we pass that on to others so other people can have meaningful conversation. And they're going to start with the difficult ones first, I think. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Guys, if you want to participate in this and watch the next time, you can jump on the Zoom. It's your first time is always a guest for free. Just you can hop on. If you know somebody that maybe needed to see this, it's only up on YouTube or up on this for till tomorrow morning. Then it goes away and it goes into our vault. But people who join that is $50 a month, and they're allowed to have all the archives for all the years from people from all kinds of the guest of honors that we've had, but also the conversations and within the private group. What are ways that people can participate with you? I mean, you've got book, you've got coaching, you've got so many different things that you're doing. This podcast is killer. I'm loving it. I'm so glad I found out. So I'm saved it, and then notify all of that. And then you've got this. Let's close out with this whole idea about this room that you've created, that you're doing some live ones, and now it's going to do some virtual. Can you unpack that for us? Because that was killer.
Yeah. Well, there's 3 or 5 majors. I'll call them 5 majors. Number 1 is the podcast. So if you can listen to that on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, YouTube, if you can help me be cool in front of my son, because I get subs and my son will think I'm cool. So if you do YouTube. You got the second one is the Vibe Room. Everyone is asking for all the guests, if they could be a fly on the wall in the studio. And I said, well, why don't we create a live event? So we created the live podcast, which is called the Vibe Room. We've got that on October 5th in Salt Lake City in a speakeasy jazz club, like the marvelous Miss Maisel. And I'm interviewing Larry Namer, the founder of E! Entertainment Network, NBA legend Thurl Bailey, and we've got award-winning singer-songwriter Damian Horn. So those are throughout the year, which is the Vibe Room. Number 3 is the speaking engagements, speaking for companies, companies, organizations, conventions. And what I do is they always ask, like, what do you speak on? Well, I make conventions cool. And how do I do that? By bringing a different vibe and showing how to be able to create an irresistible vibe, which I talked to you about today, which is creating your heart set, your mindset, and your skill set, putting them in line. That creates an irresistible vibe. Number 4 is Secret Knock, the #1 networking conference in the world that you can't go to unless you're invited. And I'm the co-host of that and of Prosperity Camp. So those are the 5 ways to be able to be in touch. But check out the podcast. Check out the podcast. Check out the podcast. It's honestly the coolest project out of all the things I've ever done in my entire life, from mowing lawns to selling now and laters to opening up businesses to traveling around the world. This is the greatest project I've ever done in my entire life. And so I would appreciate if you would ever come and listen.
Absolutely. And let's put that in the chat session and as well. And when we add you to the Next Level by Association Facebook group, we'll put the contact information there too, so people can follow up with you there. We try not to be the middle person. We try and allow great communication among great people. So,
of course.
We're going to close off on the broadcast, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A for those that are on Facebook, that are on Zoom. So guys, if you're watching on Facebook, just know that this avenue is available to you as well. Appreciate you guys being here. John Hackelman said, absolutely, he would love to. So we'll make that connection. And guys, appreciate you. Get out there, make it a great month. Enjoy your next level. We've got a lot of things that we do during the week. We have a group coaching call that we do. We have a Monday morning live stream that we do. So check those things out too. But before you do anything else, go and check out his podcast. We'll put it in the link there, but go check it out and subscribe and hit all notifications. Because you are not going to want to miss one of them. Every one that I've watched, and I've watched probably 5 hours worth now.
Thank you.
Everyone has been, that is great. So guys follow that up.
Bob, can I compliment you and for your audience, you guys have to understand that you're dealing with the real one. We met yesterday. This man does his research. He spent a ton of time doing it, and he honored in every way possible. And I could tell you this, the things that you're talking about, Bob, and for your audience, the things that he's talking about right now are the things that he talks about when no one's listening, because I was on the phone with him yesterday and he was speaking about these same principles and he was utilizing these principles. So the cool thing is you found a real one. You didn't find a theorist. You found a man who's actually doing it and who's willing to share and sharing it in a community. So there's very few of those people in the world, and we need more Bobs in the world. But Bob, my hat's off to you because you are a real one, man.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Again, thank you to Troy Hoffman for making the introduction to us. If Troy says, Bob, you need to meet this guy in Zimbabwe, and I don't know his name, I don't know how to pronounce it, but you need to fly there and be, it's like, okay, let's figure out how. The answer is yes. I just don't know how yet, but we'll figure it out. So Troy is one of those quality human beings that you and I really respect and appreciate. So Troy's another great guy to follow. So
yes,
we're going to close off on the live stream.
Okay.
You guys stay right here, and then we'll open it up for Q&A for the people that are on Zoom.
The Q&A too, I tell you, I mean, I love everything, but the Q&A, I love this stuff, Bob, more than anything in the world.
You and me both. Yeah, you and me both. I just can't believe that people they leave, they don't participate in the Q&A. We've had so many great people, and you go, why is nobody asking a question? But so cool.
Can you give away something?
Yeah, it's just
why don't you
right now?
Why don't you give away something for the first question, and then that seems to open it up? I don't know.
Oh, good idea. Well, what should we give away?
A sheet cake from Eric.
A sheet cake from Eric. Eric popped on, so he wins his sheet cake.
Yeah, I'll handle some sheet.
You guys can all come on camera, and you can just ask your question or make a comment. So Rose, anyone, Dan, you guys can all come on. So yes. Eric, since you were first.
Phenomenal, man, mind blowing. Wow. The whole, it was powerful. And just hearing you and what you were sharing, man, I've fallen in love with you and just met you. What was that, about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago? Hey, okay, so what's the connection with the Oilers?
So my dad, my pops bought me a jacket, my mom and pops, they bought me a jacket when I was 6 years old, I believe, because it was on sale, because we lived in Idaho and no one liked the Oilers in Idaho. But I think it was buy one, get one free, because my brother liked the Rams and the Rams were everywhere. So I think they bought this Rams and they got the Oilers for free. They gave me the jacket, and my brother is my hero still to this day. You got to check him out. His name is Rob Cardenas. He's not a huge, you should have him on as Bob, you should have my brother on. He is one of the top attorneys in Las Vegas. This guy is the realest, but because he was a Rams fan, he was an all LA fan. So Dodgers, Lakers, and Rams. And because he was my hero, I got this jacket and I was like, okay, so I'm a Rockets, Astros, Houston Oilers. And it stuck. And I never lived in Houston. I didn't travel there till I was, probably in my almost 40s. And I was the only kid with rocking Oilers stuff all over the place. And people were like, who is this dude? But it just became something that people were okay with because I just stayed at it. So.
That's cool.
And Eric, get this one. I was just telling Bob this. For 3 years, I reached out to Eddie George on Instagram. I sent him videos and I said, hey, I started this podcast because of my kids. I didn't want them to worship idols. I wanted them to be inspired by icons. You're an iconic person to me, and I want you on the podcast. For 3 years, I did, and he finally answered, and I finally got to have him on the show. And so for me, when you watch the show, and if you got to see it, Bob, yeah, I've got the biggest poop eating grin the whole time. Like, it didn't matter what he said. I was just, it was cool.
I loved it. I really loved that. And, Eddie George is just such a phenomenal player, such a phenomenal person.
Bad dude.
Bad dude. Yeah. The fact that you got him on, it only took 3 years of constant upheaval, right? Or constant pressure. What made him say yes? What was it? Was it a certain number of views that you were getting? Was it a certain somebody else making a reintroduction? Did you find out why he finally said yes and what took him so long?
No, because I told him, like I told you, I said, I'm going to force you to be my friend for the rest of your life. So we've stayed connected. The hard thing was, though, is I was on vacation. We take July off and we go to Park City and we spend the whole month there. I didn't take my podcast studio. And he called right when I got there, and I told my wife, I was like, oh, well, I think I'm going to push it out and wait. She said, you don't wait on opportunities. Success is not a good negotiator.
Oh, I love her already.
And so she said, you do whatever. So if you watch it, the quality of the video isn't as good as the normal podcast, but that's the way the opportunity shows up. And most of the time we're thinking, no, I got to look clean. I got to look crispy. I got to look. And it was like, no, you're going to look dirty, nasty, but you get to spend time with your hero.
There you go. There you go. I mean, I loved it. I mean, yeah, I noticed it right away, okay, this is not the normal connection, internet connection that you would want. And I'm like, but I love the fact that, because the truth is, if you're waiting for perfect, guess what? You'll be waiting forever. There's always going to be something wrong or could have been done different. You look at my TED Talk. I look at my TED Talk, I'm like, I love the content. I love my presentation. But couldn't they have gotten a better cameraman, or couldn't have gotten a better, clarity? No, but guess what? It's a TED Talk, and it's something that I've been able to help a lot of people with. I'm like, okay, you just stop worrying about what it looks like. You just be thankful that you had a TED Talk. So,
and it was a good one, real good one.
Really, 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 really good one.
Thank you. Who else wants to make a comment or have a question? Thanks, Eric. I appreciate you, brother. Flo, you're up.
Okay.
See, Flo knows that if she doesn't raise her hands, I'm calling on her anyways.
I was going to say, I do have more.
Okay, let's go. I'm here. I'm here with you. So I'm open for whatever.
Appreciate it.
Gosh, we have something in common. We're both Central Coast,
Yeah.
We were chewing on the same dirt back in the day. Loved it. I know you got a lot of inspirations from your parents. What can you say your number one learning would be?
Well, there's 3 things. I didn't realize them while they were happening from my mom. 3 things from my mom, 1 thing from my pop that got edited later on. So the 3 things were, you're awesome. My mom would scratch my back. She had the best nails. We couldn't afford, and they didn't do acrylics. Not judging them, but she just had real nails, and she had good back scratching nails. And she would scratch my back every night to go to bed and scratch my back to wake me up in the morning. And she would tell me I was awesome. She would tell me I was beautiful, and she would tell me that I could do anything that I put my mind to. And she would do that. She would do that. She'd do that. Well, one time a substitute teacher said to my brother, they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? My brother said, I want to be a football player. She said, what position do you want to play? And he said, I want to be a quarterback. She said, you're too short. You won't make it. My mom, because she raised us on, you could do anything you put your mind to, went down and almost put a hurting, like a physical hurting on that teacher. And the teacher never said anything to my brother like that again. But I didn't realize what she was saying, like why she was saying it. But what I realized once she passed, I'm awesome. Separate myself from my accomplishments. I'm not awesome because I got an A on a paper, because I started a company or I made $1 million. I'm just awesome because I'm Kelly. Number 2, I'm beautiful. Don't ever compare myself to anybody, including myself. And this is where people go, I had a challenge, because people, and like I was telling you earlier, that where people would take a saying and then they worship the saying. They say, oh, don't compare yourself to anybody but yourself yesterday. Well, if you compare yourself to yourself yesterday, you're going to kill the memory of what happened. And so be here right now. Yesterday was perfect because it happened. You can learn a lesson from it, but don't compare yourself to yesterday, because you ain't in yesterday. And you're comparing yourself, you're going to tarnish the memory of that thing that happened. And so this is what she was telling me. And then she said, you could do anything that you put your mind to. But here was the caveat. When she passed away, I realized just because you could do it doesn't make it your purpose.
Amen.
So, so just be Kelly. And see, my dad summed it up like this. He said, boy, this is how he talk. He'd be a boy, boy, you're the greatest. And that's what you say every day. Boy, you're the greatest. Boy, you're the greatest. Boy, you're the greatest. He would write it. Boy, you're the greatest. And then it changed when my mom passed away. We would talk every single morning, me and my pop. I would call him. We had a contest. Who could call who earliest? And if I called him at like 6:15 and I called him before he called me, I'd be like, he would answer. He'd be like, hello, boy. And I'd be like, I've been up for like 4 hours. I already done chopped some wood. I know those lazy people over in your land are doing this. And then he'd do the same thing to me. He would call me at like 6:14 and do the same thing. And when my mom passed away, because every time we got off the phone, every single time in my life, he would say, you're the greatest. Boy, you're the greatest. Boy, you're the greatest. And then it changed. And he said, boy, you're the greatest. And then he paused and I could hear his heart.
Mm.
And then he said, so act accordingly. And then he hung up.
Wow.
Can you imagine, Flo? If you simply understood that you were the greatest, which you are because God made you and you are perfectly, wonderfully made in the image of God, anything contrary to that's a lie. And from this day forward, only believe the truth.
Mm.
And imagine if you understood that you were the greatest. And then, like Bob was talking about earlier, you acted according to that greatness. That would take that statement that my pop said that was so simple would take the personal development industry and go,
Yeah, you might.
Because that would be the best one-page book of all time. Am I correct?
Amen.
Can you imagine opening up the book? It's just really thick, one thick page, and it just says, you're the greatest, so act accordingly. The end. Boom. Like, I'm out.
Woo.
Thank you.
Powerful. Love that. Love that. You know, one of the things I ran across when I was listening to you talk in your videos and things were the idea that it's not, how did you say it? I want to make sure I say it the right way. What was it? Failure is an option.
Oh, yes.
Failure is an option. And, you know, again, it's one of those cliches. Failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. Expand on that because I think that's brilliant.
Well, I mean, sometimes God has you to fail because he doesn't want you doing that thing. Sometimes he has you to burn out because all the fuel in that area is gone and he needs to take you to another place with fresh fuel. But a lot of times we burn out and then we get frustrated and figure out how to be able to stay in that place. And then we try and create fuel where there's no fuel. And then we get mad and we wonder why we're so frustrated. And so, I mean, and people will say, like, I put that up and I love it because there's trolls all the time.
Yes, sir.
I put that up. And if you look in the comments of that video, it said, you never fail. You just learn. No. You failed. Like I failed. I closed businesses. I failed. That's okay. I'm not down on myself. I'm not beating myself up. No, I failed. Like call it for what it is. And once you acknowledge the truth, right? Once you acknowledge the truth, first of all, you have to become aware of it, but then you can acknowledge it. Once you acknowledge it, then you can aspire to do something new, but you can't, most people try and go to aspiring into things. Oh, I aspire to do this. Well, have you acknowledged what the truth is? Are you even aware of what it is? Until that point, then it's just a bunch of nonsense you're throwing in the air. And for me, God allows me to fail a lot. I had a salon at the Hard Rock Casino and it was amazing, you know, but there was failure that I made, stuff like that. And then the salon or the hotel shut down, and that's okay. Because what most of the time people don't realize is that the failure that you have today, most of the time will be the foundation of your success in the future. But if we never allow ourselves to fail, but I'm not telling you from like I'm the man, I got all these theories. My brother called me one time, and this was a hard one to hear, Eric. My brother said, the greatest strength that you have is the greatest weakness that you have? And I was like, oh, I've heard that before. And I was like, okay, so tell me why. He said, you're like a Mexican boxer. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, Mexican boxers have the highest rate of death in the boxing ring. And I said, well, why? He said, because they don't quit. He said, sometimes, Kel, you need to know when to quit. But we're taught from the world, never quit. Sometimes you should.
Right.
But I didn't know how to. So I would just stay in and take a beating in the ring and think like, this is my badge of honor. This is what no, there's sometimes where you need to give up. Sometimes where you need to wave the white flag and be like, I'll live to fight another day. I'm good. Wow. And imagine if we did that. Imagine if when you read a book and it just wasn't catching. There's a book called Disney's Land, which is awesome. I'm into Disney, but I have not been able to finish that book in 3.5 years. But you know what? I probably shouldn't finish it because it got to a point where it sucked. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And I would allow that. So that was a long answer to a short question.
No, it's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Question or comment, Rose, did you have a question? I saw you come on and you disappeared. Maybe somebody came in and walked in on you or whatever.
Oh, sorry. Hi.
Question or comment?
Gosh. Well, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you, Flo, for inviting me. I'm gonna have to pop out pretty quick because I have to go pick up my daughter from work. But yeah, no, I mean, pretty powerful stuff. What Kelly said about, he doesn't have the answer, but he knows who does. Right. That I'm never going to forget.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. That's pretty awesome.
Great nugget. Well, thank you for being here. And
yeah, absolutely.
Forward to learning more about you and hopefully you can come back.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Dan, question or comment?
Well, I have a comment for Rose. Kelly said it. He said, you just need to tell your daughter that you're with people that are more important than her. And she can catch a ride.
That's what Uber's for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
No.
Right.
Can you take that? Can you take that knife?
It was nice meeting you, Rose.
I'll text her right now. She needs to get an Uber.
Hey Dan, you can take that knife out my back real quick if you want, man. It's kind of uncomfortable.
Well, I have to twist it first. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is thank you so much. First of all, thanks Bob for inviting me tonight.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kelly, for sharing everything that you shared, and obviously for Bob being a wonderful spirit guide in the process and doing his research and getting all that there. When you were saying about there's a place to go for the thing. Today I read in the Bible every day, trying to find something that's that speaks to me, and just ironically, I read this Jeremiah 29:11, which is, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future."
Amen.
And one of the things that I find in my reading of the Bible and just my life is that God has brought me to a point where all of a sudden I can see why things happened before. And I see that you are there in your life, that you see what what your parents were saying to you, even if they didn't know what they were saying to you. You got the message, you got the right message.
Right.
It might not have been when you were 16, but all of a sudden those words come back, and especially, you know, the fact that your parents reiterated certain things to you over and over and over again. But you know, I was reading in Acts the other day, right after Jesus ascended into heaven, they went to an upper room and waited. They prayed and they waited. They waited for the Holy Spirit. And sometimes the hardest thing for us to do in today's world is to wait.
Amen to that.
And wait to hear, you know, be silent enough, be in tune enough to wait as opposed to act. Always act. Yeah. You know, I think in today's world we are pushed to, you know, the self-help people and everything, you know, move it, you know, get this done, you know, don't hesitate. You know, sometimes you do have to hesitate and you have to listen. What my friend Glenn Morshower calls a whisper. No. And you know, but you have to be quiet to listen for the whisper.
Amen to that, Dan. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Kelly. This was just absolutely wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, you guys. I appreciate each one of you. I appreciate them. Not the fact that you showed up on the podcast. That's not what I appreciate about you. What I appreciate about is who you are. The person that shows up on this podcast, the person that is willing to go on camera and have a conversation that maybe they're not totally comfortable with. Maybe they are, but the bottom line is they're on the conversation, whether they're comfortable or not. That's what I appreciate. I appreciate really who you guys are. And Kelly, man, we are friends for life. I appreciate you so much. I am so grateful. I'm gonna give Troy a big old kiss and tell him thank you so much for the introduction, because I just I love Troy. I love who he is. I love how he operates his life. And when he says you need to meet this guy, the answer was yes. And boy, am I glad I said yes. And I just appreciate you and thank you so much for being the man that you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll put the information for his book. We'll put the information for his website. We'll put the information, everything in the Facebook group. So if you're a member, you'll have access to the Facebook group. We'll put it in there so that you have access to it. Go back and then reach out to him privately and personally, and you know, have a conversation with him. The guy is he's the real. He's the real. He's the real deal. I hate that term because it's just, again, overused, but he really is one of those guys that I look up to. I've only known him 24 hours. I could have this conversation with him every day for the rest of my life. So thank you for being that person. Guys,
Bob, I want to tell you something. I don't know if you know, but your very good friend, who happens to have a son named Rocket that had a very similar situation as your little one. Larry is a good friend of mine too.
Oh, cool. He's great.
So I met Larry at a drum circle up in Orange County, and for the Raven Drum Foundation. And he sat with me, and I know he's a very close friend of yours, and it's no wonder, because he sat and he asked me questions and he actually connected, like a true connectivity that you talk about. And he did that. And we've been friends ever since. So, and when I found that you two were connected, it was just, it made my heart sing.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Larry is just an amazing human being again. And yeah, I love Larry Broughton. I love him to death. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you guys. Get out there, make this a great month. You know, every month we do this on the third Thursday. It's for the last 13 years. People will call me and go, Bob, when is it? It's the third Thursday of every month. It doesn't change. Hasn't for 13 years. I don't plan on it ever changing. So, but there's a lot of other things that we do that you guys can plug into as well. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being the human beings that you are in this world and making our world a better place. And I love you all. Thank you.
You've been listening to Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell. To find out more, call us at 949-542-6398. That's 949-542-6398. Or you can find more information on our website at everythingnextlevel.com. That's everythingnextlevel.com.